Today we're sharing two chiropractic stories. One of them makes the point that I think is really important of the full and thorough examination that this doctor did before he adjusted a woman. The second is maybe something you haven't heard of, which is animal chiropractic, and how, yes, an animal with a spine and nervous system can have interference and can be adjusted. Hi, I'm Jenna Quentin, founder of Adjust Your Media and host of What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure, Stories of Innate podcast, and I'm excited for you to dig into these stories. If you have any questions, you can reach out jenna@adjustyourmedia.com, and you can see the video of the cow that we were talking about in the show notes, so check that out too. So today on What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure, Stories of Innate, I have Dr. Austin Davis in Montana, and it's awesome because we have two stories: a person with some neurological issues, and then also a postpartum cow that we're going to talk about. So welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Jenna.
Okay, so tell us first about the patient who came and was having some neurological stuff.
So the patient I was seeing originally was a woman who is local here. She's amazing. Was seeing her and her family at this point for wellness care. And her sister was in town visiting. Her sister lives up in Alaska and lives in pretty remote Alaska. I think does some kind of environmental biology work. She also suffers from pretty severe seizures, grand mal seizures, and wasn't from childhood. Apparently it was an accident had like 10, 12 years ago where she had fallen, hit her head real bad, and then just sort of had developed seizures. And medically, she was just treated as a seizure patient and was on medication for seizures, but hated the medications because it made her feel absolutely separate from herself, but it kept them at bay. So she came down here to visit, was just visiting, and was in the office, heard me talking chiropractic with patients, and saw me adjusting her extended family. And came in the next day and basically asked if she could go through a full workup because there's nobody out where she was that was doing anything like this, and she had never really had chiropractic care. So we did what we do. And I apologize if this is going to mimic like all of the other stories, and it's super simple. Like, there's not a big magical experience here. This is kind of the beauty of it, is we just do what we do. We just went through a full neuro exam, did digital x-rays, and it's pretty A to B. Found that her occiput, so the bone that makes up the back of the skull, had slipped essentially and was sitting on her upper cervical spine, C1, C2. So the foramen magnum, the big hole in the back of the skull, the soft spot there, was kicked off axis. Her central canal, where her spinal cord travels, was being interfered with. So, brain stem, spinal cord interference, occipital drift. So brain-body communication wasn't there, and the body would throw seizure fits. Found that fairly easily. And I don't mean to sound like overly simple, but this is what chiropractic is. You find the interferences and then correct them. So I found it, explained everything to her. We adjusted her, let's say on a Monday. She came in again on a Wednesday because I do off-site care on Tuesdays, which will sort of lead into the cow. Adjusted her Wednesday, and she flew home. It was two adjustments. It was the first big adjustment, and then sort of a follow-up before she got on a flight back to Alaska. And then I didn't see her. I mean, I haven't seen her since, and I haven't heard from her. And her sister came in, and this is a couple of months ago. This was earlier in the year, in the summer. So her sister came in. I said, hey, how's your sister in Alaska? And she said, I'm amazed I haven't told you yet. She has been off her meds and has not had a seizure since coming in here. And she really wanted me to thank you. And I can't believe I forgot to tell you and all this. So it had been months and months and months. Now, this is not lifelong correction at this point. This is months. But after going from what was described as almost a daily bout with seizures, not all of them were major, life-altering seizures, but some element of seizure in her day-to-day life, to nothing for months, is remarkable. And it's remarkable in the sense of how simple it is. I don't mean remarkable like this magical, this magical process took place, and we had to climb a mountain and pluck a flower that we ground into it, and then at New Year's Eve on a full moon, like dropped it in her eyes. Like we just put hands on spine and cleared interference. It's remarkable how simple it is and how the simple things get so mixed up in the medical world and are viewed symptomatically rather than cause-based. And the symptoms are easy to mitigate. I mean, they easy at first, and it gets more and more complicated as the body develops compensations and adapts to the medications. And then you have more and more and higher doses and a life of chemical interference for relative short-term gain with some long-term effects. But it's also just it's a simple process. Like I wish there was a bigger story here, but it's like A to B.
Look, I want to go back to a couple of things here because some of what you said, like you did a full workup. I love explaining that and having you say that to people where you thoroughly examined where you're identifying. You're not jumping to like, well, I'm going to guess.
Right.
You know, I would suppose that if this happened, then that. You're, of course, using discernment and your years of experience, but you're doing the full workup. That's such a fantastic thing for the general public to understand. Well, I want to go back to, we know a lot more about concussions and traumatic brain injury than we did 50 years ago. And yet still, you know, you said when you did the x-rays and things, you could see where there was an issue. And it's fascinating to me as a mom of kids in sports and things that as much as we know about traumatic brain injuries and concussions and accidents and things, that not a lot of healthcare professionals are trained to look at that C1, C2, that occiput.
I would venture to guess that no healthcare professionals are really trained to look for that except for chiropractors.
Yeah.
In the sense of alignment, they can look for breaks, fractures, cancers, tumors, malignancy, big scary things that they can fuse together or cut out of you. But in terms of the actual impact of alignment as it relates to neurologic function, I would venture to guess that even some of the top medical neurologists are lacking in the sense of they might be able to determine there is insult to the area, but that's about as far as their expertise goes. They don't have adjustive procedures. I know that these days they're letting just about anybody do manipulations and teaching PTs and all these other groups to do some type of adjusting manipulation. But again, relatively nonspecific and not really related to neurologic function. So in terms of upper cervical care, even osteopaths, because they're viewing mostly, from what I've gathered, more impact on the circulatory system and circulation.
Yeah.
So I would say that chiropractic is the only primary care profession, but only healthcare profession that detects and analyzes interference to the neurology of the body and has a mechanism to then address those interferences.
And I think that is so important for anyone to understand as we're looking at that. That's such important information. I love too that you said, you know, it's like the brain throwing a fit. And I think that that's such a great way to put it. I think it takes some of there's mystery in how the body works, but some of it is so simple. If I'm wearing jeans that are too tight for all day long, I will throw a fit. If we are under pressure in any situation, under pressure, under irritation, we're gonna have, like you said, cause and effect. So it makes so much sense to say, if we're seeing an effect, well, let's go find the cause.
Right. And, you know, it's one of the ways I described, you brought up concussions earlier. As somebody who has suffered major concussions from sports growing up, I have a traumatic brain and neck injury from hockey. I have a compression fracture, C6, and it was left with pretty debilitating migraines. It's the way I describe migraines to a lot of patients, because medically there's still sort of this mystery to migraines, and they look at it more environmentally and what are the environmental factors that we can limit. But when you look at a migraine, it's really simple. It's what we were describing with my patient, and it happened to manifest as seizures. It's a similar network, we'll call it. But if you have your occiput or skull off axis, that means the brainstem through the foramen magnum there is interfered with. So now you're interfering with the brain stem, which is, we'll call it major communication to the body, right? So the brain's not getting communication feedback from the body. That's one easy way for the brain to freak out, is if it's not getting information or feels like it's giving proper information. Then you have the actual anatomy of the upper cervical spine. And the unique nature of the upper cervical spine is you've got all these vertebrae that have more than just that central canal that the brainstem travels through. You have these little peripheral canals that the arterial blood flow goes through, and it travels through the bone itself, where, and I believe it's down to C4, C5, you've got those canals that the blood flow travels through. After that, it leaves the spine and travels with the spine, but not through the spine. So then what you have is, if you have upper cervical misalignment, you've got interference to the communication, but then also to oxygenated blood flow, and that's food and fuel essentially for the brain. So if the brain's not getting communication, food or fuel, it freaks out. And what I describe to patients is it fires off a flare, basically like, I need help. This is bad.
Yeah.
Now, environmental factors, smells, foods, stressors will magnify that tremendously. But it's hard to say that those environmental factors are the actual cause of it. I would venture to guess that just about everyone with environmental triggers has some element of upper cervical misalignment. So although it may seem like lavender fires off a migraine, or some people eating chocolate, or it's certain things, or noises or sounds or places or people, they're magnifiers. They're magnifiers for an underlying problem.
And I can see that. I can see
yeah,
that
until
too.
that problem's cleared, it's just, then you're just sort of like checking things off a list, and you have to live in this little, bubble of like, don't bring this near me, don't have this near me, I can't see this, I can't do this. And that's not
and it is
healthcare.
when it's like those things being like the last straw of, I can't adapt anymore.
Right.
I can't, like, on some days I would be able to handle that environmental trigger, but other days when it's just like, whoa, can't adapt anymore, can't manage it. So we've talked a lot about the neurological issues. I think so many people think of chiropractic mostly in a mobility, pain way. So this kind of makes me want to talk about more this postpartum cow. So what was up with this postpartum cow, and how did you help her out?
So to even lead into that more directly from what we were talking about, I had a dog that came in with seizures. It had hit its head on a wall. It was chasing a ball or something like that, and was having regular seizures, and checked and adjusted this dog. And the dog has not had a seizure in over a year.
Wow.
And I was talking about this in the office, and someone had overheard that animals can get checked. Now, animal chiropractic is very established. There's some legends of the industry. Dr. Jay Kamarick is one of them, happens to be a good family friend. His son, Austin Kamarick, too, amazing guy. So I was in a bit of morning meditation, and a patient's name popped into my head, and I figured I'd reach out and call her just to say hi and see how she's doing. She has not been in a long time. So less than a reactivation call, more just a check-in call. I care about my people. And so I called her, and I think it was like a Saturday or Sunday, and she was blown away. She goes, I can't believe you just called me. I have this cow who's down. I need you to come check this cow. I know you adjust animals. Now, I will caveat this entire conversation with chiropractic for animals, like I said, is completely established. There's full courses on this. People dedicate their whole lives to this. If any creature has a nervous system, it can be interfered with, and that interference can lead to dysfunction. This is not just like an opinion-based thing. This is not what kind of pain are they in? This is, again, the crux of chiropractic being neurologic communication leading to function. So in my state, chiropractors are allowed to adjust animals. If they are not fully certified, the chiropractic board will not back them should something happen. There's also kind of a gray area with promoting it. So I am not necessarily promoting my skills as an animal adjuster. I'm just telling you a story of what happened one time with one patient. So I give her a call. She says she has a cow down. Now, this woman is amazing. She is a florist. She grows all her own flowers, big farm down the Bitterroot Valley. And she produces a lot of the raw milk for the valley. And this is one of her main dairy cows. This cow gave birth about 5 days prior to me seeing her, 6 days prior. And she was She's still with us, thankfully. She is huge. She's a massive dairy cow, like in the range of 1,300 pounds, like massive dairy cow. She gave birth to the most beautiful little baby calf named Georgie, sweet little girl. But from that moment, couldn't get up on her own. So she was on side lying in a ditch, couldn't get up. And now I did post a video about this on my Instagram, and most of the comments were a long laundry list of how it's not a chiropractic event. We need a vet. So just so everyone knows, a vet had seen this cow multiple times. Mm-hmm. There was a theory that it was hypocalcemia. It's like milk fever, happens a lot with dairy cows. She was treated for milk fever. It was not milk fever, did not get up after that. They did PEMF, they did muscle stim, they did steroid injections, they did B12 injections. They did everything a vet could do to this cow. Manual therapies, muscle therapies, supplemental therapies, everything. Even hard medical approach, pharmaceuticals, everything.
Yeah.
This cow could not get up on its own. And if you do link the video, just as a heads up, the first few seconds is tough to watch because it's her struggling to try to stand up. When we pull a tractor around, the noise of it, she knows she needs to get up. And you'll see her struggling, and it's difficult to watch. And her baby could only feed off of like 2 teats that were exposed. And it was just, wouldn't leave her side. It was very, very sad. The vet was there when I called, and my friend said, you got to get down here. This vet is about to, quote unquote, manually expire the cow because she's been down for a week and we need to end the suffering.
Yeah.
So I said, look, send the vet home. I can't make it today, but I'll be there tomorrow. And that was Monday. I called on a Monday because Tuesday is my on-site day. So I drove down there on a Tuesday, and sure enough, she was in the ditch. And I called Dr. Jay Kamarick, and he was able to provide me a lot of advice on the anatomy of cows in this situation. So there's no possible way I'm physically setting a vertebrae per se through most of the pelvis, lumbar spine. There's just so much mass.
Yeah.
So it was a beautiful process in terms of shifting and reawakening neurology in the body.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was getting on SI joints, and the adjustive motion was more to re-stimulate neurology to that area. Mm-hmm. So we did a sacral push, SI push, grabbed a lead rope, tied it around her fetlock, which would be essentially like an ankle of the back foot, and like a long lever traction pull of that leg almost up to her head to reset the joints. And a lot of times just by re-stimulating the neurology, those muscles are contracting hard enough to actually assist in the adjustment. You see a lot with horses and animals, but C5 adjusting, so basically holding the bridle, pulling to the side with like a full fist contact, and then pressing into C5. And then what you'll see in the video is, and the most amazing thing was setting that occiput atlas junction. And that's where you put the head essentially on your shoulder, you lock in just under the occiput. And this cow is so strong that even like when I had the lead rope around her fetlock, if she just flicked, she would throw me across the ditch. I mean, I was covered in mud and cow shit and sweat and a little bit of blood. And it was like, it's filthy, and they're so strong. It's amazing. Yeah. But so then I have her head on my shoulder, and there's no way I'm going to muscle this without her willingness to be a part of this experience. And this is where, and again, I hope people write in objections and want to talk about this. But at that point, it was like just allowing her to feel my energy, my heartbeat calming, and just each breath calming her down. Because if I went in there like, oh, I hope this all stressed out. Yeah. These are animals. Animals feel this type of energy. If anyone has a dog and you're stressed out, that dog will most often come over to you, put its head on your lap, or check in on you in some way. So this cow just breathing, and just feeling the tonality. And this is where tonality comes into play with chiropractic, that if you line me up with 10 other chiropractors, we all do the same adjustment. And I'm the only one accounting for tonal balance and that little tonal window where the body wants to accept the adjustment. I feel there's going to be different results throughout that process. So waited for her tone to change, and then set that occipital atlas junction as quickly and as strongly as I could. And even Jay Kamarick was like, look, man, this is the neurology of a cow. Don't be discouraged if there's no real results right away. Just, keep monitoring and all that. And so we pull the tractor around, and it's got these little hip hookers to grab her and lift her up. And I'm holding her lead rope, and the farmer pulls that tractor on. Just the sound of it, this cow pops straight up on 4 legs and starts walking across the meadow, full milk let down. So she's just milk's flowing out of her, which is what I've learned. And this was a new experience for me. I learned is often in times of stress, when a cow or a goat or something is under major stress, that full letdown means that the body's finally in a relaxed state and just
Absolutely.
so she's just, milk's flowing, and she walks across the meadow, has a big drink of water, eats a bunch, her kid feeds on her. And me and the farmer at this point are basically, it's the closest I've ever come to crying in my life. This is not like a macho man thing. It's just, I've cried at the movie Miracle, where the USA team beats the Ruskies in hockey.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that was about, because I got to dress in their dressing room when I was a kid for a camp. Other than that, I don't cry, but this is about as close as I've ever come to crying. And we're hugging and fist pumping. And I said, okay, keep me posted. And then she was up and down every day after that. I went 5 days later to recheck her, and she was up on her feet. And what was amazing is I went to check her 5 days later, and one of her other cows just like queued up, waited in line. That cow was done. That other cow came. And then like 5 goats lined up just in a line, and checked all the little goats and everything. And so she was up and down. And what's interesting is without really thinking about it, I posted this little video on it, mostly because I was just blown away by this process. And I know chiropractic. I don't even say I believe it. Chiropractic is my life. And to see it work this purely was amazing. When patients saw the little Instagram video, because I posted it real simple, and it blew up. It's at 1.5 million views right now. And I was getting chiros that I went to school with sending me DMs going, hey, a patient of mine saw this. Is this you? And I was like, yeah, it is. And they're like, oh, this is amazing. And so, but a lot of patients were commenting on it, that our farmers going, well, it's probably hypocalcemia, it's probably this, it's probably that. And it wasn't any of those things. And then when patients say, wow, that's amazing, or that's so crazy, it was a really great educational tool in the office, because I said, actually, it's not crazy. It's really, it is amazing, but it's not amazing in the way they think it is. Like this was a magical thing, or we did something that is unheard of. It's really the purest form of chiropractic. She had interference and from the birth process. So essentially what it appeared was not necessarily a total hip issue, which during birth, obviously there's major SI, sacro, iliac, hip, everything is all messed up, as you know, vividly for four kids.
4 kids.
Yeah. So there is that factor, but this was the brainstem interference. This was the paraspinals that run from the hips to the back of the skull from giving birth at her size and straining so hard, pulled that skull off axis, interfering with the brainstem. And you could set the hips all day long, and there will probably be some mobility changes and increase, but that life force was diminished. And that was the big problem. And so when patients go, that's so crazy, I go, actually, it's the most basic chiropractic premise is interference to the major communicating system of the body leads to dysfunction. And that may present at the end of the line, but if all you do is check the end of the line, because that's where the dysfunction appears to be, we're missing a big part of the puzzle here. So the importance of full spine care. Obviously, upper cervical docs are doing amazing things. Heck, I see a Blair doctor here, as well as full spine. So, it's all essential, but when there's severe major trauma, you have to check the whole system.
Love that. I love that you brought in how neurological this really was. And, people have used the Christopher Reeve's example of, you hurt your neck and you're paralyzed example before, but this is really, there's so much in this that is important. Like you said, the tonality and accepting it, the fact that she knew you were there to help, and she was like, yeah, help me out. I can only imagine the distress of a mother trying to take care of her baby, unable to do so, the pain of not being able to be fully milked in that situation as well, but also, just this is also the big idea that one small thing affects and impacts and ripples out because it's this mother's life, it's her calf's life, it's the farmer's livelihood,
Right.
it's the families that want milk for their,
Yeah.
like it ripples all the way out. And it comes back to, like you said, that it was during birth, which is a perfect, beautiful process that sometimes has interference.
I mean, it's beautiful. It's the most beautiful experience. I obviously have never been through it. I delivered my son, so I was present for a birth. But even the most beautiful birth, and I would consider my son's pretty beautiful, is severely traumatic. I mean, all birth
Yes,
is trauma.
yes,
Even if it's the easiest 3 push,
yes.
it's blissful state of being in a pool, and it's traumatic. All birth is trauma.
And it doesn't have to be the mother or child's dysfunction doesn't have to be as obvious as she can't get up. What I want to highlight is that even in this beautiful process, that there was dysfunction, she did have issues, like you said, and that in any situation like that, it doesn't have to be the worst car wreck. It doesn't have to be the worst sports injury. Any of those that are causing a subluxation are negatively impacting our expression of
Yeah.
life.
That's right. It's universal law. It's not like there's a tolerable amount of interference, which I believe would be more of a medical model where there's limits, right? There's a bandwidth to just about all symptoms that is like acceptable.
Mhm.
In our world, I don't think there's an acceptable amount of interference that should be just sort of like left alone. Well, it's out, but it's like not that out. So just
Mhm.
like don't worry about it. Call us when it's like really bad.
Yeah.
My belief is just it's any interference is detrimental to the expression of life. So if that's the case, then this is why patients should be checked as
Yes.
regularly as possible. And doctors should have mechanisms in place to allow for patients to be checked as regularly as possible. Because we live in an era now where, there's a lot of chiros, a lot of docs that, and this is not a commentary on them per se, it's just the nature of our situation right now, that, hold pretty tightly to a price structure or hold pretty tightly to a pattern structure. And maybe they were coached that way, maybe they were taught that way, maybe it's what they feel is right. I've always kept an ability to see all people every day if they want. We run memberships, we run what we call an open door office, because knowing that any interference is unacceptable and the patient wants to be checked as often as possible, we should make that available. So that's what we've always done, and it's how we get through this thing is by constantly checking, because we live in an environment of constant stressors. There's always going to be something going on,
Mhm.
and we should always have the ability then to check and see that the body is clear and connected and communicating properly. If we truly want to make a difference in the world, because the amount of patients I get that are new but have been to other offices, and I say, what brings you in? And, oh, well, they wanted to see me 3 times a week, or they wanted me to come in all the time. And now I have to educate them that, technically that's not a problem. That's a good thing. But if chiros aren't educating as to the importance of
Mhm.
consistently checking for interference, it leads me to believe that we're in this sort of pain-based model of
Yeah.
chiropractic that a lot of chiros are coming out of school with, because the schools aren't up to snuff, or their coaches are telling them that, the money's in the machines and the pain control and all this. And then if a patient thinks that they're there for pain control, then yeah, coming in 3 times a week or coming in when they feel great doesn't make sense. And they end
Yeah.
up washing out because they're for one certain thing that's not even really a reality in our world. So I stress the importance of educating on interference-based care, subluxation-based care, on vitalistic expression of life-based care. So they understand when I say, look, I want to see you this often in the beginning for correction, and ideally for the rest of your life at this cadence, at least they go, yeah, absolutely. Now, knowing what I know now and how the body works and what you're looking for, like, why wouldn't I want to be here as often as possible?
Exactly. So I'm going to put in the show notes and in the comments if you're looking for a chiropractor in your area, we'll help connect you with a great
Absolutely.
one. And so the last thing that I want to add on this is for people to understand too. What I love about an animal being checked is the fact that animals don't believe in chiropractic. Animals are
Right.
not coming to you for a cure saying, "Doctor, cure me."
Right.
They either are functioning better or they're not. There's just not an element of belief there. And like you said, we have a cat and I lay down, that cat's going to find me, especially if, and I'm up in my office all alone here. I lay down on the floor to just, breathe for a couple minutes between calls or whatever. That cat will find me and just be like, "Are you lying down because you're happy? Or are you lying down because you're sad?"
Right.
They understand things at just a more simple, innate level. And if we can get back to that of just finding a chiropractor who, one, does all of these things, like you said, a full workup, who is going to check you, identify subluxations and correct them, and then one that you truly can connect with and feel great with, then it's just a beautiful experience.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing all of this. And we're going to put information in the show notes where you
Sure.
can find more information and all of those things. But thank you for sharing this today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jenna. Really appreciate it.